So at the end of the last video, if you remember, there were 2 workers. Well, in a month, a lot of things have changed. As you can see, we've probably got maybe 10 or 11 workers now. I think almost all of the pupae have hatched out. I think there could be 1 or 2 left. But what I found interesting is they all seem to hatch out at the same time that they pupated. So for example, I remember 2 larvae actually pupated on the same day and they hatched out on the same day. So that was pretty cool. I have only seen Lasius Nigers though. I haven't seen any Lasius flavus yet. However, there are 2 that are kind of a greyish colour with a bit of orange colouring. Now they may have just hatched out and they're going to get darker, or they could potentially be the Lasius flavus. Interestingly though, I actually saw a nest today in the garden, and I have heard that they're actually quite secretive ants. They don't forage much above ground. And this nest was found between 2 pots. So basically there are 2 pots in the garden that have been there for ages, and these ants pretty much live in both of the pots and make a tunnel between the 2. They're quite close together. So they could be relatives to any that hatch out in the test tube, but who knows, there could be more in the garden somewhere. But for now, I'd say we've mainly got Lasius Nigers, and I think we'll have to wait till next month to see really if any actually turn out to be orange like the Lasius flavus, or maybe at the start the queen actually knew that they weren't her eggs and she ended up feeding them to her larvae. Now, something happened this month that was quite similar to the end of last month, and that was we had another pupa without a cocoon. Now, in the last month's video, oh, that was a little bit controversial, wasn't it? So, if anyone actually listened to me in the video or read the comment that I left first thing on the video, you'd have seen that I said that I observed that baby ant, I'm going to call it a baby ant, and I knew it was breathing at the start. That was earlier in the day. I usually leave the camera filming for about 3 hours, times it by 60, the speed of the footage, so I can watch it back and I see, okay, yeah, it was breathing. So I came back later that evening to check it again, and at this point it had been moved to where all the scraps of food go. The queen and the worker weren't bothering with it anymore. So once again, I filmed for hours, sped it up, and the ant wasn't breathing. So obviously I deleted that footage because I'm having like 3 hours of footage on my computer and it wasn't doing anything. It was literally like a picture. So that's when I decided to take it out. And I did actually put it back in. I don't know what happened to it, whether it did actually end up hatching out or not, who knows. But the difference between that one and this one, this month, is this one actually has eyes. Like, you can see black dots where its eyes are going to be. And funnily enough, I was watching a video the other day with a massive colony, and they had loads of these in the nest, and they all had eyes, whereas the previous one didn't. So, I don't know, maybe they're in different stages of development, who knows. One thing I did notice with this is after a few days it started to turn yellow. I didn't notice it breathe at all, and I really don't know what happened to it. However, a few days later I did see this ant, and it kind of looked like it had been squished, but then I realised that it looks also like it's hatching out of an imaginary cocoon, and I thought it was really sweet that the other workers were actually trying to help it out. Now you'll notice this one is kind of a greyish colour as well, so that makes me think that the greyish ones we see at the moment may still be Lasius Nigers, just getting ready to get darker, because obviously they hatch out a lot lighter. So yeah, so it was struggling a lot. It was trying to hatch out of this imaginary cocoon, so that one could very well be the ant without a cocoon. Does that make sense? I don't know. Anyway, so I took some photos in the nest in the last week, and something cool that I noticed since we've had lots of workers is they started to store food. So bits of cricket they've been putting up in the cotton warble, which is pretty interesting because when I had one worker she really didn't bother. This month, however, they've gone crazy for storage, so that's good. What I've been feeding them is actually the exoskeletons of crickets. So I've been trying a new addition to my crickets' diet, and I've noticed that they've all become really healthy and they're growing super quick. So there's tons of exoskeletons hanging around. So I popped one in the test tube and that went down really well. You'll see like the worker carrying it around, feeding bits to the larvae, leaving the larvae around it. And yeah, they seem to make the most of it and obviously store it, so that food source went down really well. I don't really know how much nutrients are in the cricket's exoskeleton, but they seem to like. Another thing I noticed when I took a photo was they also store eggs and larvae in the background, and I'd seen them do this. I'd seen them remove some from the background, seen them add some in and so on, but I actually zoomed in. You can see a larvae, which is kind of difficult to distinguish against a white background, but I imagine in that cotton wool ball there are just hundreds. Maybe hundreds is a lot, but tens. Tens of eggs and larvae. One thing I always find funny is when you see the workers carrying around like bunches of eggs or larvae, they actually kind of look like, the food vendors in sports games. I've never actually seen them in person. I've only ever seen them in films, in like American sports games. Never seen them in person, but that's what they reminded me of, just like carrying all of them around. Another big thing is the Queen has finally retired, so I've noticed that she has her own worker that just cleans her, and she pretty much does nothing now. Like for nearly 11 months she had to move eggs, larvae, pupa, like reorganising them, pretty much doing most of the work that the workers should be doing. And I think that's because she just had one worker. And I have heard from people that they've caught a queen early in spring, which seems a really bizarre time to catch one. You normally see them like late summer, but I don't know. And she's laid eggs, they've hatched out, they've pupated, and she already has a bunch of workers. So your queen has been very lucky. Mine has had to work for a very long time, but now she's retiring. Although something, I was just filming them earlier and it really concerned me. All the ants were like scurrying around the queen, and she seemed to be kind of lethargic a little bit. Like she wasn't moving as much as usual, and there seemed to be a lot of hype around her. And I didn't know if she'd just like laid a whole massive batch of eggs, because there did seem to be loads around her like abdomen area. But I always thought that she would like gradually lay a few at a time. But if you do know whether they actually do have these like mass production of eggs suddenly come out, and maybe that's what's happening, then let me know. If you know something else that's going on, let me know as well. Also this month I attached a test tube to another test tube, put a connector tube in the middle, and at first I didn't think they were using it. Then I did start to notice a few of the ants going to the other test tube, and then I started to realise that all they were using it for was to get rid of some rubbish. Like there was just a little pile of bits of cotton, empty cocoons, just rubbish. And that's when I realised they just think it's an extension and they don't want to move. I did, of course, do the thing that everyone says, put the other test tube in a dark area and the one they're currently in light. So they've been exposed to daylight for over 2 weeks and they still don't want to move. And this isn't direct light, they're not getting scorched by the sun, it's just like the room light's quite bright in my room. And yeah, they just don't want to move. So if anyone else has tips on that, please let me know. Also, I was looking on AntsCanada and they have like these little places for like queens, like the founding chambers and that. I didn't know if they were worth getting like one of those. I really don't know, because obviously my nest is only like 10 or 11 workers, but I think it's going to grow quite quickly. The problem with the test tube they're currently in is the cotton has been going mouldy for ages, although I don't think it's too bad. It's not as bad as it looks. I put some fresh cotton in by the entrance and I noticed they started to pile it on the back, so they are sort of repairing and removing the horrible cotton. It is a bit difficult. Like back in winter I tried this for a whole month. I connected them to another test tube, they didn't want to move. This time I thought with more workers they might want to move, but no, it's been quite difficult actually. So any tips are welcome, and if you know what sort of size I should be moving them into, if there's an alternative to a test tube, then let me know. But yeah, this has been quite a long video, but I hope you've enjoyed the update. Anyway, thank you very much for watching, guys, and goodbye.